Hey, welcome back to the Power Factor. And we're covering the second part of a disturbing subject today. But my partner, Dave Murray, how you doing today?
Hanging in there. What about you, John?
Doing good. So we're going to try this and see if we can avoid the dreaded glitch. So we got the chat room open. Go ahead and send me the first link you want me to bring up, and I'll share my screen and bring it up.
Oh, I emailed them to you. Do you have it on email or you want it in the chat?
Yeah, in the chat.
All right, let me I can pull down pretty quickly. 1 second here.
Down to the bottom.
Yep. No, I just had to pull it off of my email. You should have the first one. I believe that is to a Facebook link regarding Newsmax.
Okay. So let me share my screen. There we go. And bring the sound up.
What the hell is going on? They were screaming "F you fascist" if it was hard to understand with the bleeps and stuff. I get it. Students at the University of North Texas in Denton, pasty white kids from Texas, shouting down a group of young conservatives, among them Jeff Younger, who is running for a House seat in Texas. The students were, quote, protesting Younger because he opposed the gender transition of his young son. And there's a whole story to this, and it's quite compelling stuff. And Jeff Younger joins us now. Also joining us is Kelly Neidert, a student at the University of North Texas, Denton. Kelly and Jeff, I want to thank you both for joining us tonight. Jeff, I want to start with you. Tell us a story as to why you were there to give this talk and just how it exploded into this.
Well, the Young Conservatives of Texas at UNT asked me to come and talk about my vision for Texas since I'm running for office. And in particular, they wanted to hear about what's happened to my son and my fight to protect him in a Texas court and in the legislature related to some of the problems that I want to fix in Texas. And that's what I came to talk about. Didn't get the chance to do that.
Didn't get a chance to do that. Tell us about the fight over your son, because the details of that are really something.
Well, my wife divorced me when my son was 3 years old in order to transition him to a girl. And that's led to, a 7-year court fight now for me to stop her from chemically castrating him. The medical records show that she wanted to do that around 8 years old. My son is now 9. I was in court and essentially won a case in front of a jury. I got 50-50 custody, no child support, and I got all the conservator rights. But then they recused my judge, put me in the most leftist courtroom in Dallas County, and they've never implemented that order. And in fact, gave me a gag order, which was specifically intended to prevent me from running for office in the state of Texas, a totally illegal gag order. I refused to follow the gag order and challenged the judge to throw me in jail so I could challenge it on habeas corpus grounds. The judge refused to do that, and instead, the judge took my children away from me, saying that I hadn't followed the court order and the gag order.
And your wife, your ex-wife, was trying to transition your son and chemically castrate your son since age what?
3.
3 years old.
That's right.
Is there any what would this little boy say if we asked him? I mean,
well, she testified in court at our trial in 2019 that what caused her to believe he was a girl was that he chose a girl's toy in a McDonald's Happy Meal, and he wanted a silver purse with a unicorn on it when they went through a Target. However, my son has consistently never presented as a girl to me. He only presents as a girl with his mother. So the court had 2 choices. He could have a normal life with me, or he could have a transgender life with his mother. And the court has consistently chosen to push my son towards a transgender identity. It really came to a head in July when my son visited the court-appointed counselor and 4 times told the court-appointed counselor that he wants to be a boy and he wants to go to school as a boy because he's getting embarrassed by all this at school. And she immediately pushed him out of the office and called CPS on me and initiated the 7th CPS investigation that I've endured just for wanting to raise my son as a boy.
That's
It's amazing. And on that basis, told the court to take my kids from me.
Good God. I mean, that's just an unbelievable story. That's a horrifying story. I do want to bring in Kelly just for a second. You both were in a pretty nasty situation when you guys tried to leave the building, as would be expected when you have these psychos surrounding you. You took some video. Let's take a look at that. My God, Kelly, what was it like going through that? Tell us your experience that night.
Oh my gosh. I was expecting, a lot of protesters at the event. I faced that before. Most of the students just know who I am by now because I've been, doing these conservative events on my campus for so long. So I was expecting some backlash, some protesters, and there was a safety plan in place. If the police felt that it was too dangerous, me and Jeff were to be evacuated. And obviously it got to that point. So the scariest part was getting separated from Jeff and our police escort. After that, I mean, we were just like all hell broke loose. I was kind of pushed into a building with 2 officers and I ended up hiding in a janitor's closet in this building while Antifa ran up and down the hallways, trying to open the door, screaming. At one point we had the lights off in the closet and they were right outside. Again, they didn't know we were in there, but they were shaking the handle and just kind of on a witch hunt to find me. So it was terrifying.
It was terrifying.
For a moment there, I honestly I felt like I might not make it out at that point.
It's unbelievable to see that video. I mean, the anger. Jeff, before we go, I got 10 seconds left. When I see kids like that, I honestly just feel bad because I think you can see how disillusioned these. I mean, I don't even know what to think about what you guys went through, but do you just feel pity for kids that have that level of anger and just disillusionment at that young age?
About halfway through, I kind of realized what was happening. I started going after the professors in the audience, telling them how they had miseducated these children to think that this was normal behavior, violating our American social norms. And some of these are sacred social norms about respect, decorum, and free speech. And further, I think that we're facing a crisis of fatherlessness in this country, as we know. And I really looked out there and saw fatherless children who really had no guidance when they were young.
And they've been completely indoctrinated by some very sick people in our society. Kelly and Jeff, I'm glad you guys got out of there. I really appreciate you guys coming on to tell us that story. It's an amazing story, and I wish the best of luck to both of you guys.
Thank you.
What a mess. I mean, I don't even know how to categorize what we just saw, Dave. I mean, where do you start?
I've seen this video several times, and I've followed Jeff frequently on his Facebook page. And every time I see this topic pop up, I just say to myself, that can't be real. This can't be happening. Maybe the mother wants this to happen, but why would this even be entertained at all by the judicial system? I mean, that is nothing more than an embarrassment of our so-called judges.
Yeah. So let's I think we'll start with the boy. Let's start with the boy. So
Excuse me.
In any divorce where you have a 3-year-old boy, the boy is torn. He's torn. He wants to make mommy happy. He wants to make daddy happy. And it's tearing his little heart apart that mommy and daddy are that we're not going to be a family anymore. That explains the behavior when he is with mommy, he acts in a way that he thinks is going to please mommy and make mommy love him. When he's with daddy, he acts in a way that he thinks is going to please daddy and make daddy love him. This is child abuse. This is child abuse, what this mother is doing to this boy. And this, and I'm not even starting to speaking to the actual barbaric physical atrocity that's happening here. The mental abuse, let's start there. The psychological damage that's being done to this boy, for basically a political agenda. And then let's bring the lens out, Dave. And then you see that the result of that in these kids in this classroom. This is what the breakdown of our society. It's creating a bunch of little narcissistic monsters. I hate to say it, but that's what it's creating.
Yeah, it's very chaotic. And I mean, he mentioned CPS getting called on him. Here again we go. We talked about Child Protective Services, in the last last video podcast that we did. But why on earth isn't Child Protective Services investigating the mother? I mean, in all essence, the kid was declared logically, physically a boy at birth. I mean, you don't need one. If your two people are standing out in the rain, you don't need the other person to tell you it's raining out. I mean, it's that simple.
Right.
I mean, this is it's crazy that we have Child Protective Services who really should be abolished completely. Investigating the father when the mother should be investigated. And I may be wrong, but I think the mother may be some sort of doctor, like a pediatrician.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the larger context of this argument. We've got a woman who's been nominated for the Supreme Court. This is if this isn't a classic example of the duplicity of the left, the duplicity and the insanity of the left, I don't know what would be. You have a person that was nominated to the Supreme Court based on two criteria. Now, this is the same class warfare, class identification that the liberal left has done for years. So, irrespective of qualifications or ideology or any of those things, the left basically decided the next nominee to the Supreme Court has to be Black, female. This very nominee to the Supreme Court, who was nominated because she is Black, female, stands up in front of the cameras, has the audacity to say that she doesn't know what a woman is, or she can't define what a woman is because she's not a biologist. And someone in the crowd, I thought, had a very, very good answer. I'm not a veterinarian, but I know what a dog is.
Yes.
This is not, you don't have to be a biologist to understand the difference between a boy and a girl.
Yep.
So what's happening is this little boy is being sacrificed at the altar of some ungodly ideology that they're trying to foist upon the American people. Ted Cruz asked the same nominee. Well, if you can't tell me what a woman is, then if there's a case where a woman's being discriminated against, how would you determine whether that person is standing in the case or not? This is taking all of this insanity to its full extrapolation. What do you want us to see next? What is it?
Did I send you? Oh, I got to mix up when I sent you you got your screen shared, but it's it's in all of my screens, so I can't get to my stuff.
Okay, all right. So I'll stop the screen share for just a minute.
Oh, okay.
What I'm going to do is when next time I bring screen share up, I'm going to try to, well, we should both be able to screen share, but that's all right. Just send it to me by chat and I'll try to bring it. I'll bring it up.
This over here, people should see this link. Look at it. It's the fatherless generation, and it gives some statistics. It's a little bit of an older link, but it's still got a lot of relevance to it. But it shows some of the stats about what happens when
I got it
the
up.
father.
I got it up.
Yeah,
Go ahead, talk us through it.
Yeah, so I mean, you're going to look at some of the statistics in here about when the father is taken out of the equation. And this is nothing to discredit mothers, because we definitely need mothers to do their part. It's just this is just demonstrating how critical the role is that the father has within the family, and with the child. And when we take that out is when we start having problems. As you can see right here in the stats. I mean,
let's highlight these three right here. This is just astounding. Let's just focus in on these three. Talk about this is amazing stuff here.
So the homeless and runaway children from fatherless homes, 32 times the average. I mean, I've experienced this where my son has ran away. Behavior disorders. Yep. That, I mean, I can attest to
20
yep,
times the national average.
80%.
80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. And now I want to extrapolate on this a little bit, because 80% come from fatherless homes. But let's take the 20% that didn't come from fatherless homes, and let's talk about, because it doesn't spell it out here, but what percentage of that 20% were, okay, the father was there, but he was dysfunctional. He was abusive. He was neglectful. He wasn't a good father. So
and what percentage of that where maybe the father passed, was dad completely out of the picture, and there was like a guardian or something into the picture or not? I mean, there's all
Dave,
kinds of ways to go around this.
One of the things that we got to look at is this addiction to work that some people have, where they're so obsessed with success and they're not content to have one Ferrari. They have to have two. They're not content to have $1 million home. They have to have a $3 million home. So they're constantly, in these statistics, that father would be reflected as being one of the 20%, one of the fathers that's in the picture, but in reality, he's not. If the son never sees him, so these numbers are actually probably low, right?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. Well, some of the other stats to bounce off of is, I believe this is on uw.com. I've seen on another video. Is that in these custody battles, when they're decided upon, somewhere around 80 to 85% of the custody goes towards the mother. And here we have 70 to 80% of the issues with the child are in split family homes. We only, I think, if I'm, and I may be wrong, but only something like 2 to 4% of these custody arrangements are 50-50. And then you have a little gray margin in between. So, most of your custody cases dominantly get put in the mother's hands, and dominantly we have a reflection of stats that indicate, the child is having all, either grows up or has some sort of issues in the mother's care. And like I said, again, it's not that we want to throw balls at the mom. It's just to show that there is a critical need for the father in the home.
Mhm.
So this becomes an issue. And people say, oh, the family courts must not know of these stats. They know what they're doing. They're called, this is their job, they're living. I mean, you gotta tell me that the average Joe can go pull something like this off of Google, and the court judges don't know this. They know exactly what they're doing.
Mhm. I'm just looking up something real quick. Just give me a second.
Actually, I think, and you may know this too, that I think most of the mass shootings have came from kids from fatherless homes.
As a matter of fact, it's astounding. Almost all of them. Almost all of the mass shootings, the school shootings that you're talking about. Okay, there's lots of elements to it, and people on the other side will say, well, it's the weapon. Okay, all right, that's a discussion for another day. But let's talk about three things that I think the left needs to wake up before we can have the discussion about the weapon. The left has to acknowledge three things that they refuse to acknowledge. Number one, almost all are young males who either had an absent father or had an abusive relationship with their father. And that is like 90 plus percent. It's if not 100%. That's issue number one. Number two, these are kids that are being treated with psychotropic drugs. Their counselors have them on psychotropic drugs to deal with depression. Well, it doesn't seem to be working. The medication is taking a depressed kid and turning them into a psychotic kid. And I can tell you this from personal experience, Dave. Years ago, when I was dealing with depression, going through a lot of really bad stuff, the doctor put me on a couple of different medications, Paxil and Wellbutrin. I stayed on that for a couple of weeks. That was it. Because it was literally turning me into a person I didn't recognize. That's the effect that these medicines can have on someone. And the third thing that has to be acknowledged about these school shootings is every one of them happens in a gun-free zone.
Yeah.
There is nothing more maddening than telegraphing to the shooter, hey, guess what? We're not protected here. I can't think of anything more stupid than that. But let me go back to the larger point that you're making here. I was trying to find something online. I found it, and I think it's a subject that ties in. Yes, it was a big deal because Our Lady, the consecration to Our Lady by the Pope of Russia and Ukraine. Kind of bringing back into focus the message of Fatima. One of the essential messages of Fatima is right here, the final battle. The visionaries of Fatima were unanimous that the final battle would be an attack on marriage and the family. And boy, it's right here. This is right here what we're seeing. And I think what you're trying to say here, I guess you're taking the empirical evidence of what we're seeing in our society, you're tying it in with this. The message, the attack, the essential attack on marriage and the family has been their tactic, their approach is to attack the father, to go after the father. And you know what? It makes sense. It makes sense. Do you know when a wolf attacks a flock of sheep and carries one of the sheep off? Do you know how he grabs the sheep?
No, I never thought about that. Go ahead.
By the throat.
I was going to guess a neck, but
grabs it by the throat. Why is that? So
I would,
so the sheep
I would
can't
say
cry
that.
for help.
Oh,
So the sheep can't cry for help. Yeah,
you know what?
I
That
think
makes absolute sense because when you go into these court systems, as a parent, the family court is very different in one aspect, and a couple aspects from the criminal court. You're not allowed video cameras. You're not allowed to record your own video recording of yours, like yourself or your audio. You got to buy the audio off of them.
so
It's
let's
completely shut down.
Let's take this analogy to its full tilt. You're silencing a sheep. Sheep can't cry for help and taking away the shepherd. The father is the
Yeah.
shepherd. The father is the one who guards the sheep. Let's face it. Let's face it. The majority of time, the father is the defender of the household. This is not a sexist statement. This is not, people don't understand that because we say that men and women have different roles and fathers and mothers have different roles, is not saying we're elevating the value of one over the other. All right. But if you were going to invade a fortress, you were going to invade a castle. Okay, what's the first thing you're going to do? You take out the guards.
Yeah.
First thing you're going to do. Right? First thing you're going to do, if you're going after the flock of sheep, first thing you're going to do is take out the shepherd. Dave, that's what we're seeing right here, isn't it? Are we seeing anything coincidental here, or do you see your experience in the family courts in New Jersey would speak to something that is deliberate, it's designed, it's built into the system? You started to talk about that a little bit in the first episode. I mean, extrapolate on that. This is not something that's happened accidentally. This is something that's structural. There's basically a bounty on going after the kids, going after the families. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the court systems are incentivized, the state's incentivized by federal funding. And here pops up the question is some people I've talked to say, well, why not, and I am in process, why don't you just take this issue to federal court? They'll handle it and correct the situation. And that's, at first you think that's logical, but fathers have such a hard time getting this matter in front of family court or in front of federal court because you got the issue of domestic relation cases. So it's kind of like a twisted thing, because if you look up US 1983 cases, 1983 cases involve civil lawsuits where someone of the government entity basically worked out of their parameters and violated your civil rights, just simply said. And there's like a little notation out of the box just in regards to judges. When judges can't be sued for this unless they're not working in their official capacity. Well, then you got to come up with how judges are not how did the judge violate your civil rights when he was working apart from his official capacity? And 9 times out of 10, the family court case or the lawsuit against the judge or somebody like DCP&T or whatever gets thrown out for jurisdictional purposes. It's not that you didn't have a valid argument or anything. It's just that they have no jurisdiction over your area. And what it is, maybe somebody should be questioning the jurisdictional aspect of the United States, because what they're telling me is, or anybody, is that the federal courts can't have jurisdiction over somebody they're federally funding. Something seems wrong with that. There's no oversight on of who they're giving money to support these programs. And it's a money house. They say, I've heard it's all over the place that family court alone brings in more money than all other courts possibly combined. We're talking like a 50 to 60 billion dollar a year industry here.
You
It's
know,
not
we have
little.
another battle against language, don't we? Because they are very good at using language to their advantage.
Mhm.
Like, for instance, Child Protective Services.
Yes.
So when you take on Child Protective Services, it kind of sounds like you're against protecting children. Well, what kind of monster would be against protecting children?
Mhm.
Let's speak to that. Do the facts empirically show that Child Protective Services have been protecting children? Have they been doing an effective job of protecting children?
Child Protective Services have been sued, and child protectors have lost time and time again, to the point where everything that Child Protection Services do should be looked over federally by somebody like the FBI or the judicial administration for errors. Because what happens here is that you have CPS go out and investigate the case, and most oftentimes, unless they're court ordered, you can't get to the records. And if you have an attorney representing you, you know, they have access to the records and can go over the records with you, but it's hard for you to get the records yourself in hand. Because I'll put it to you this way: if a person gets the records and you see them records, I'm going to bet 9 out of 10 problems that you see a lot of the fraud that's happened in CPS with the inconsistency of their own records. I've looked over numerous, and these are public transcripts. You can go on like New Jersey DCF and find child fatalities listed. It'll be this dashed out, but you'll see situations like there was one in there that said unfounded, not established, kid is dead on the next one. And it's like, well, what happened with all those other unfounded claims? And here we're arriving at the point where the kid ended up dying. I think one of the kids got his throat slashed by the mom's new boyfriend. You get a lot of that going on. And one of the cases that I'll point out that's very public, it's on Netflix, is the trials of Gabriel Hernandez or Fernandez, something like that. If you go on Netflix and look up that case and watch that, that's something that will give anybody a good gist of what's happened in the family between the family court and CPS courts kind of deal, which are closely related. The CPS is dropping the ball. And the one of the main points is that they had like 4 or 5 caseworkers involved in that I'd have to I have a hard time recalling the movie in this. I don't know whether they got fired or nothing major. Like nobody went to jail that I can remember. They just claimed like some sort of negligence over it. And there was something called the Blue Ribbon or the Ribbon Council that's supposed to come together and put corrective measures in. The stuff like this shouldn't happen after that, you know. Well, come to find out after the fact, like they demonstrate that, I don't know, it was 1 or 2 or maybe more other kids died in that same relative county that the other kid. And this Gabriel kid, he suffered. They found I think a BB in his body. He was shot with a BB gun. He was handcuffed to the inside of the cabinet. He had multiple head injuries, missing teeth. He had school counselors report this to the CPS workers over an extraordinary amount of time. Even the sheriff's officers were there a number amount of times, or law enforcement, that when the defendant attorney for this kid had to get records, it took him like a year to get the records from law enforcement, because across the board, law enforcement and CPS both dropped the ball on this kid. I think he was tortured to death is what they came. I mean, you can go on the internet and Google there's like a blueprint draw out of all the injuries that this kid had. I mean, they put him in a hospital into a coma or something where he had blunt force injuries. He had skin missing from the neck. I mean, it was bad. And one of the things of the video was he always, you know, the kid in his head was always trying to please his mom. So some of these examples where you have child abuse, I don't think a judge is really qualified to make any kind of determining factors over a child abuse record. Number one, without having the witnesses there. Number two, without having given the chance of due process to put this before a hearing. I mean, we can sit there and demonstrate inconsistencies, but it ultimately needs to go before an honest court to make these determinations happen. And when this stuff is restricted out and kept and pawned off to the side, we end up with an issue. And this is all in light of the slogan that the family court loves to bounce around, is the best interest of the child. And in New Jersey, there's no law defining this. It's just whatever the judge kind of wants it to make it to be. So it's horrible. It's all incentivized program.
Well, you know the particulars of the case that we dealt with when we were in New Jersey, and Dave, my family never recovered from that. And you know, I mean, my wife kind of went off the deep end. It kind of led to our divorce. She became a different person after that. You know, she became an alcoholic. I mean, and you know, there's a certain amount of that that's personal responsibility, obviously, but you can't underestimate the traumatic effect of what my family went through in your state. And you know the particulars. You know the particulars of what happened. Me and you have talked about it many times.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world is that woman not in prison? How is she not in prison after what she did to my family? Mm-hmm. You know, she came in the home and she expected me to trust her. I want to remove your kids from the home tonight. Whoa, wait a minute. What am I being accused of? I can't tell you that. What's the accusation? Can't tell you that. What's the nature of the accusation? What's the source of the accusation? Dave, she said that it was a vague, listen to this. This is the language that was in the case file. It was a vague, anonymous allegation of abuse. That's what she put in the case file. Vague, anonymous allegation that fell under, this is how she said, these were the exact words. I want to make sure I got the exact words right. That fell under the broad umbrella of abuse and neglect. That's what she said. A vague, anonymous allegation that fell under the broad umbrella of abuse and neglect.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me tell you what actually happened. An actual person got her father to take her to the police station, where she says, my friend Megan says that she was raped by her grandfather. I don't hear anything vague there. I don't hear anything anonymous there.
Mm-hmm.
And CPS denied me the right to protect my child because they came into the situation in such a way as to make me understand that I was being accused of something. Okay. And they didn't do anything to dissuade that conclusion. And this woman wrote in the case file that she told me and my wife of the accusation and that we didn't care.
Hmm.
How is she not in prison? Can you explain that?
I'll give you the mentality of this. I sent you a link in the chat. This is an article you want to pull up.
Yeah, let me bring it up.
You pull it up and I'll go over it. Wait,
Yeah, let me screen share again. And
and you can give me your opinion on this. I think it's crazy.
all right, hold on a second. Looks like we got an ad here.
Gotcha.
No. I don't want to see your ad. Hold on a second. Is this it?
Nah, that's the well. You got to exit off it. Yep. Now pull
This
down.
is it right here? Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Sorry.
scroll down. Now this right here, I'm gonna scroll down a little bit more. Right over here is, I don't know if there's sound on that video. I know.
Oh,
Video
okay. I'm
wasn't
sorry.
popping up on mine.
Let me make sure that I'll bring it back up again with sound. Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. I'm sharing with sound. Okay, the speaker's turned off on the.
A knife of some kind.
All right, let's go back. We'll listen to it and then you talk about it. Okay?
Shortly after 1 a.m. In the morning on January 12th, Mobile Police responded to the Country Meadows Trailer Park on South 2nd Street in the city of Mobile for a report of a man that had been stabbed. The initial description, again, was that of a knife of some kind. She was also described something that could be nail clippers with the point that comes out that's used to clean nails. When the police arrived, they located the victim, Axel Torres, in the bed of a pickup truck that was at the trailer. The defendant, Ms. Ayala, was in the bed of the pickup truck asking for help and assistance and performing chest compressions on the victim. When they asked about what had happened, she indicated that she was responsible and that she had done this with what she initially described as a knife that she uses to clean her nails.
Not only did she sustain a concussion, she had a bite on her hand, a human bite. Kathleen, if you could just raise your face, you can see even today. Her nose was broken. Her eye was punched. She suffered from those injuries that particular night from an individual who I'm told was 6'4". This young lady is about 5'1" and probably 80 pounds soaking wet. This is a young lady who has 4 young children, ages 11, 10, 8, and 7. They are presently being cared by some family members who cannot continue on that endeavor. It is being done temporarily because of her current incarceration. The altercation that night, we believe, ensued because he was upset after smoking marijuana that the bathroom was dirty. He then confronted her, and then this unfortunately broke out. As I said, he was struck in the calf. When she went back outside, he continued to beat her. She was on the ground, and she was using the knife in a defensive posture. All that will be borne out, I'm sure, at the trial. You didn't hear anything about any stab wounds being fatal other than the one in the calf. I mean, who stabs someone in the calf if you want to kill them? Nobody. I mean, it happened, unfortunately, but I'm talking about narrowly when we're speaking about specific intent to kill.
I appreciate the arguments, counsel.
Talk about what we just saw.
Well, there's something in there I want people to see. Scroll lower on it, not just a video. So if maybe you could bring your screen back up. And this is where this is getting to your question. Well, why did they just blow this off, or why did they do that or this?
Where are we looking?
Just a little bit down. Okay, right in there. Oh, you'll see Cumberland County Superior Court Judge William Zingler said he was personally inclined to release 30-year-old Ayla, if I said her name right, a Millville resident, a Millville resident with 4 children. She has been in custody since January 12th. So here we have, and I don't know if there's any update thing if she's been found guilty or innocent or whatever, but here we have the pleadings from the court, or the mentality from the court. And Judge Ziegler, he was one of the judges in my case. Here we have Judge Ziegler, who, according to the Daily Journal, was inclined to release a woman who was up on being charged with murder, to release her back to her 4 children. If that were a man, my guess is they would probably be measuring the rope as the court hearing went on. I mean, I was critical without discussing too much details in my case.
The thing about it is here, because I can immediately hear the reaction from the other side. The reaction from the other side says, well, it's clear that she was abused, that this man abused her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, it's not clear. That's what's being alleged. And it may wind up being true. It may, when this comes out in court, it may be shown that this woman was defending herself. And if that turns out to be the case, then I would say that she needs to be released. This was a self-defense thing, and reunited with her children. But doesn't prudence dictate that we got to first arrive at that point before we reunite this woman with her children? Do we assume that what she's saying is true without going through the process? This is an example of what you're talking about, of what's in the best interest of the child. So wouldn't the prudent thing to do is take these 4 children, put them with another family member or someone else while we go through,
clarify a couple issues. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the experts can investigate this, because the woman's story, this kind of thing does happen. There are people who kill people in self-defense. But then there are also people who, for every real claim of domestic abuse, there's a false claim. I happen to know a guy who was, I'm just going to be blunt about it, routinely accused of domestic abuse, when it turns out that it was his wife that was basically beating the daylights out of him with anything that she could find, any weapon that she could find. And when he would put his hands up to defend himself, it would be he's abusing her, and he would be the one that would be placed under arrest. It's so those kind of things happen, and I'm not saying that I know that to be the case here. That's the issue, right. And it doesn't sound like that's what you're saying either. But I think, to your larger point, if the situation is reversed and the man is saying she was trying to kill me and I killed her in self-defense, there's no way that the judge is going to say, well, I tend to believe that he might be right. I'm going to go ahead and release him back to his kids. There's no chance that happens.
No,
that's the point you're trying to make, right?
Yeah, I talk to a lot of fathers, either on the internet, some in person. A lot of fathers have experienced domestic violence accusations, totally lost their kids, not because there was a medical documented injury, just because the mom said that he was either emotionally abusive or he hit her. And I'll use an example of a real popular case, is the John Math case. Him and his wife were sitting outside this place to eat. They had an argument. She took off. Well, she accused him of pulling and twisting her arm or injuring the arm. She went over to the court, and he was removed from the house. And it took him, the judge would not allow the video evidence to come into play. He went through 3 years of, supervised custody and all this other stuff. It got to the point where a new judge took the stand, let his video be played, and showed that nothing at all was done. Never even touched her. He got his kids back. He went to go pick them up at the first midpoint exchange. It wasn't like his supervisor or whatever. He shows up there, and his ex-wife's father-in-law or father showed up and shot the guy dead. So when an accusation is posted against a man, this carries real far. And I've spoke to one of the sheriff's officers here in the local county. So what happens when you get a domestic violence case where the mom says that the father hit her? Because all the mom has to do is say that she was hit, and the father's going to jail. That's pretty much that's the mentality. And here we have
Burden of proof, right?
Yeah, and here we have a court judge who there's one ultimate fact from that video and article, is that we have a dead person. Somebody did die. There was a knife injected into the guy, whether it was his calf or his neck, whatever. That's a moot point. The guy's dead. We have to determine if it was self-defense or if she's just crazy. One to two. I've seen some sources, I'm not sure if it was this one, where the guy ran out into the woods. She followed him out there, stabbed the guy.
And then claimed it was self-defense.
They claimed it was, you heard the thing of he's 6'4" and she's 5'1", but he couldn't defend himself from maybe he was trying to defend himself. So, but we had the mentality from a criminal judge who was just a prior family court judge, right? Wanting to give the kids, was inclined to release her back to the kids. I mean, without disclosing too many details in my case, I got criticized heavily because I told my kid, you should go back with your mom versus you shall go back with your mom. And this was like huge no-nos. And it was like, well, sorry, I'm not an English major. And we have this situation over here where there was a death. We are in criminal court, not family court. And a judge is willing to even express that idea. I mean, that's insane. But that just goes to show
where did this
the
happen
level.
again?
That is in Cumberland County. I was like one county over from me.
Okay.
In New Jersey, South
So in the
Jersey.
southern part of the state.
Southern part of the state. Yep. That it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I mean, you can Google a court case in South Jersey. I think it was Tomasello had the case that a couple was fighting over a dog, and the court case incurred about $40,000 in legal fees to write to the dog. I mean, this is crazy. So, this is why, part of the reason why, I say that they don't want video cameras in family court. I mean, you seen right there was video in there. You seen the lady crying. You heard what they were saying. That ain't happening in a family court because they don't want, the system does not want the world to see them ruin somebody's life. That's what it comes down to. They're going to ruin somebody's life coming in. It's going to be one of the two. Usually it's the father. Terrible. That we have a broken system. There's guys, I have a close friend of mine who strolled up to me on a bicycle looked a little beat down, naturally so. Said, what's going on with you? He said, screw it. He had he was a union mason at one point, making 90 to 100 grand a year, had a couple kids, relationship, whatever, didn't work out. And his child support was based on that 90 to 100 grand a year. Well, things happen with the economy, job loss. He had to go into, work for the private sector, which you go from 90 grand a year to maybe 20, 30 grand a year kind of thing. And he went for a revision of his child support. Well, they imputed a number. They basically said, well, if you're capable of making it then, you're capable of making it now. And they stuck him with the number. And the reason why he strolled up on a bicycle is he just got so down in the rabbit hole that he's homeless. He's literally living in a tent, and he's probably in arrears 500 grand. He's tried to negotiate it. They'll take him, they'll throw him back in jail for 30 days, they'll let him go, they'll find him again, throw him in, and that's the system. They destroyed that person's life. Somebody I personally know, that's the mentality of these courts. Yet, if you're a woman in this system, and this is nothing in a sexist way, this is just kind of what happens. You need child support, you're going to get it. You need assistance living, you get it. You need some child daycare assistance, phone, whatever, they're going to set you up. You've got, Salem County has a Salem Women's Center. They'll advertise, oh yeah, we're here to help men too, kind of thing, just so they don't look what they actually are, which is prejudice that most of their ads are revolved into women. I mean, I've tried to ask them several times, do you support 50-50 shared parenting? They won't answer. They won't know, because 50-50 shared parenting is a logical choice to relieve a lot of these issues that we're experiencing in split family homes. Now we're to the point where a lot of guys are afraid to get married.
Let's
because
talk about
when
what
you
have behind you, talk about what you have in your background, because you put that in there for a reason. Talk about what you put there.
Judge Ziegler, the one I just got done talking about, that he was the judge during the June conference that we had. And I had this 50-50 plan. It was real close to the plan that we had at the time. It was, I guess, like a 60-40 or kind of deal. And it was a 50-50, it was a 50-50 plan that we had at the time. But just prior to that, we had a 60-40 plan that the kid was more accustomed to, but I wanted to go into a 50-50 with the addition of an every other Wednesday, which would have been real close to the 60-40 plan, but still 50-50. And he said to me that 50-50 doesn't work, it's just for babies. And the interesting thing about this is,
and time out before you go any farther.
Mhm.
Did he base that on anything, or is that's just his anecdotal opinion? Is that based on any statistics?
any facts, any like science or stats? Absolutely not. It's just,
Hold it out.
well, the kid's he's gonna grow up and he's gonna be a Sasquatch. You're hardly gonna see him. When I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, yeah, he's right. The kid is gonna grow up and stuff, but at one point, why can't I have primary? Or why can't it still be the 50-50 schedule? And he said, oh, why can't we just, why shouldn't I just rule on this and give you 3 weekends? Why not give 3 weekends to the other parent? And it was, there's nothing, not only is there nothing statistically about what he said, it's the fact that when you look at the stats, 50-50 is better. Actually, Kentucky is one of the few states that we have some kind of history of now to implement a 50-50 presumption. In about a 3 or 4 year period, domestic violence dropped by about 30%. And from what I understand, divorce in that state lowered by about 11%. So if you're going to pull stats from anybody in any state, Kentucky's logically the one right now to do it from, and their stats are showing favorable statistics with 50-50. So this guy's just pulling stuff out of thin air. I mean, there was no, and I was pro se in this case, and they tried to, This is the case that I contested a custody evaluator that he tried to stick me with, that she ran a pro moms club for women. If you Google www.promomsclub, you'll find this custody evaluator out of Delaware. And she does court assessments. And you gotta, you know, being a father in my position, you gotta wonder, like, what's her initiative that she has a pro moms club? And you would look on the on her internet, there's a lot of like liberal content. And her website is sympathetic. Moms have the hardest job on earth, blah, blah, blah. And to come to find out, her origin was within a relative time where she graduated with my ex. And she had multiple friends from my ex's family on her friend page. It's like, I tried to contest it. And he's like, I don't see any bias here. He goes, you know, she's a professional. And if there was bias, she would call it her own bias. So I'm like, that you know, it doesn't make no sense.
She'll catch her
Tell
own
it-
bias. He actually said
Yep.
that.
Be like a mulligan.
You know, it's amazing. Me and you have known each other for more than a decade.
Yeah.
Got to be about 12 years, 13 years.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know a better father. I mean, you're going to be leaving here in just a few minutes, getting involved with your boys' baseball. You know, I've seen the pictures that you've posted of Mason over the years, and all the things that you've done with him in every stage of his life. And I don't know of a better father or a more proud father. It seems to me society would want to point to somebody like you and say, this is the example. This is what we want. This is what it's supposed to look like. Everything they've done is just the opposite, isn't it? They fought you every step of the way when all you're trying to do is protect your son, act in his best interest, give him a normal childhood. And
Yep. They fought me every step of the way. And you know, there's a lot of dads in my position, you know, that are great, wonderful dads, you know, want to be in their kids' life. I can shoot every baseball, basketball, not only the games, but the practice that I can. If I miss one or two occasions,
let's talk about the guy that came up in the bicycle, came up to you because, you know, he'd lost everything that he had.
Oh, yeah.
Society calls him a deadbeat dad, don't they? That's what
Yep, that is the term heavily used, that when the father is not involved, whether he's not paying child support, or he's just a weekend father, he's looked at as a deadbeat.
And they call him a deadbeat, but the truth is he is beat and he's almost dead. But because of what they're doing.
Right. Here's a narrative a lot of moms try and paint, is that, well, the kid's father doesn't really want to be in the child's life. He just wants to be in the child's life to reduce his child support. When the twisted analogy is, do you want the kid just so you can receive child support? Because that's really what it is. I mean, and the numbers of child support, you know, they're not small. I mean, I know fathers that are paying over $2,000 a month.
How many examples do we have where the father's paying the child support and the mother is still denying him access to the children on his days that he's supposed to have, you know, custody? Something always comes up, and yet she bears no consequences, faces no consequences. But let him be late on one of those checks, and he's in front of a judge.
That's the other thing, is a judge, you could be thrown in jail for not paying child support, but then again, it's constitutional. We're not supposed to be thrown in jail for not paying debt. And they say, oh, well, you're not thrown in jail for not paying debt. You're thrown in jail for not abiding by the court order. For paying debt. I mean, it's absurd. Yet the mom needs assistance, she gets it. And it's that I mean, anything from medical assistance to child daycare.
But if the judge denies joint custody, all right, the judge denies.
Well, back up. You have to back up here for a second, because he can grant you joint custody, but grant her 70% physical custody. So a lot of the times when a dad goes into court, he's walking out with an 80-20 split. He's getting every other weekend, maybe in between dinner night. And that's his enjoyable time. And he'll get referred to as the parent of visitation.
Yeah.
He becomes a visitor in his child's life. He visits the child. Not so much that, and then if something happens, then he's questioned on, well, is he parenting the child? And they'll try and twist every kind of narrative. Like in my case,
and then in this case where the father's getting the 20% visitation and he's only seeing his kid twice a month. In many of those cases, the mother's put poison inside the child's life. Why do I only see dad 2 times a month? Well, your dad really doesn't want to see you, or your dad really doesn't love you. And unfortunately, this child, they don't have any frame of reference to understand that. They don't have any frame of mind to understand that. I mean, the system is, I'm not trying to go off on a conspiracy tangent here to get behind motives and everything of individuals. But I'm speaking to the larger narrative of the fact that the system is designed to break and destroy fathers. I mean, let's just be honest.
Absolutely.
That's the aim.
As I'll tell you what, probably, well, not probably, I think the hardest, most enduring thing in my life is going through family court. There's the emotional struggle of it. There's the financial struggle. I mean, I don't want to say this in a negative aspect, but when somebody dies, there's that grieving period. You come to ease with family court. If it goes on for 4 years, you've got 4 years of that. It's not a couple of weeks or and then you got the after effects of, I know some guys who are diagnosed with some sort of PTSD or whatever it is, because of all the stuff that the family court put them through, that they have trouble functioning. I mean, and I remember during my appeal case that I was so shocked by the appeal opinion. Anybody were to ever read the appeal opinion, you would have to know literally little to nothing of the context in its entirety of the case to believe the appeal. That's how distorted it was. When I got the appealed opinion, I slept maybe like 10 hours in a matter of about 2 weeks. There was a 2-day period where I didn't sleep at all. And I just, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning just to take a shower to do something. And that was a struggling part. I mean, I just literally couldn't believe some of the points that they were making were so frivolous. And, and it's not that I didn't have anything kind of foreseeing this, because I said, you know what? I said, they almost can't rule in my favor, because my opinion is going on so far in the federal aspect is that if this were to get bounced back in the court for a remand and the CPS records were to come out and to find out if I was right, then in my opinion, the judge should be barred for concealing what he did. And who is the appellate court going to side with? Me or their buddy? They're all part of the bar.
I think I want to go a little deeper on what you said a minute ago about, I mean, there are men that are traumatized by what they've been put through in this situation. It seems like they throw everything at you to break you. They throw, false accusations. They ruin your reputation. They try to ruin you financially. They try to beat you down mentally and emotionally. Um, I mean, it just really, it really is a diabolical and evil thing. Um, and you're right, it does. There are many men that are ruined by this, and yet I look at you, and I've known you for, like I said, 12 years, 13 years, and I know you've been to hell and back with everything that you've gone through, and yet it hasn't been able to break you. That you still got,
No,
you
no.
you still got some fire
Yep.
in there. You still, and to talk about how it is that you keep going. How do you persevere through all this?
Well, I keep my son in hand. That I have him. I got to be there for him. As a parent, still in this. You know, um, I've spent a few nights at the Padre Pio shrine, to say the least. And like I said, I definitely had my share of days where I was just like, wow, totally dumbfounded, distraught.
As
You
have
know,
I.
I mean, I've had days where a number of days in a row where I've just reread transcripts just to, just to re-verify and say, is this really happening? It's in black and white. I mean, when you just I have, like, in one instance, one of the issues that were contested openly on public is we had no notice going into a trial. We're, like, blindsided. There was a court rule stating we're supposed to have like 10 weeks. Nothing. When you look up the legal definitions of the court and then look up court orders, like I said, we were bounced through some judges. Well, the one judge just held a trial hearing blindsiding us, restricted records that were supposed to be coming into the hearing. I mean, it was,
Dave, you talked about
there was no way.
you
There's
talked
no
about
way.
going to the Padre Pio's shrine. I went to adoration yesterday in mass. I went to adoration the day before, and I want you to hear what I'm saying when I say stuff like that, because I'm not reaching around patting myself on the back. Look at me, I've gone to adoration 3 and 4 and 5 times, or 3 days in a row, or 5 times in a week, or whatever, to get a religion merit badge to say, look how
Mhm.
holy I am. No, you're missing the point if that's what you're hearing. Sometimes I have to go 2, 3, 4 times just to get enough grace to just keep standing, to keep going on.
Yep. I think
Sometimes
you hit it right there in the head.
sometimes the
Hit it right there in
slog
the head.
gets that hard. Where would you be if you didn't have your faith at this point in your life? I mean, I look at myself and I say, I'd be done. I'd be done. There'd be nothing left. There's no way that I could have gone through everything that I've gone through if not for my faith. What do you say?
Absolutely. One of the aspects of this now, I grew up, went to, I think I got baptized. I made it to communion, and then my parents pulled me out of the communion aspect because my grades were hurting in school. And after that, I just became a jackass. So went on through life. Well, we had the kid. I really didn't know anything in the church other than it was the Catholic Church, and I was baptized and had communion. So, my ex at the time, she was in these other churches, and you figure, well, we have the kid, we want to try and pursue doing this family thing, and we were going around to these. Went to the Methodist Church and several other of these other things, and I'm gonna, our mentality, we got this research kind of mind, like, and I was hearing, you hear a little bit of anti-Catholic jargon in there, and research this. Well, baptism, yeah, that was for kids. I want to get my kid baptized. So one of my first, I would say, goals is this was to get my kid baptized into the faith. And of course, me and her were struggling with the whole faith thing because, she believed her way and I was heading towards into the church. And this is where I kind of think I first met you is, I went on one of these debate boards. I didn't even know it was a debate board. I just thought it was like a Catholic learning board. And I ran into, a guy that I friends with in there from the UK, and I ran into another buddy in there. Then I transferred. I seen you in a group, and we got to know each other. And what I thought was just like a social event of learning ended up being a debate, which is really a lot of my mentality.
You realized this kind of reminds me of the Bugs Bunny and the Daffy Duck cartoon, where Elmer's hunting, and you see the sign that says rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season, duck season. All of a sudden, it's Elmer season.
Yeah.
And you went in there thinking, we're discussing faith, we're discussing Catholicism, but then you quickly came to realize what I've known since I was a kid is that if you're a Catholic, it's open season on you.
Yeah. And when me and her would butt heads on, a lot of this stuff. And some of this, I think, was ultimately what ended things. So, it's been a learning experience in the Catholic faith. I think it was actually you. One of my biggest questions, actually, you answered in a, I don't even know if I ever told you this. I had a lot of questions about being Catholic. Who came up with the first Bible? Who was first on the scene, kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
And I was always told, well, Catholic's not in the Bible, so it doesn't mean that it's necessarily Catholic. And then I listened to you give a comment on, I believe it was Acts 9:31.
Yeah.
You probably said this 100 times, Catholos. And I said, wait a minute. I said, the whole time I'm looking for the word Catholic when there's an English Greek translation problem.
Right.
I was just looking at the wrong words. It was right in front of me. Actually, I found out that the word Catholic in general or as the whole is like 100, I believe it's 104 times in the Bible. And then we have, logically, I was finding all the early church fathers that would point to the church being Catholic. And I said, there it is. I've already made the decision at that point that I was going to go full force Catholic. But after seeing your comment on that, I said, holy cow.
For me, the thing that, and I've had people ask me this question. Okay, so I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I want to see what you ask. Okay, you're only allowed to make one argument. One argument. Of all the different reasons why you're Catholic, you got to tell me what is the one most important argument that you can make that what separates Catholicism from the other Christian denominations. And I know, like I said, it's really putting you on the spot to say you can only come up with
not putting me one reason.
Yeah,
because it's true.
Well, no, that's a cheat.
That's a great reason. Well,
that's a cheat.
Okay, I'll give you another one. It's the only one in the Christian scope of things that is logically consistent from the moment of its start.
Okay,
that's a good answer.
Fair enough.
It's from the first century to the present day and tomorrow. Yeah. The Catholic Church is logically consistent. We've had 7 sacraments. There was a pope. We have bishops, priests, and deacons. Go ahead.
Let me give you my answer because I think it really is germane to us, to me and you. Because I hear the Protestant definition of Christianity. And I ask somebody, okay, why did Jesus have to suffer and die? And the answer that I get is, well, he suffered and died in my place. Okay. He suffered and died in your place. It's substitutional. Is that what you're telling me? And they'll say yes. I say, okay. And then I ask them, do you have a life without suffering? Is suffering completely absent from your life? Well, no, of course not. Okay. And one day, do you think you're going to die? Well, yeah, I think I'm going to die. Well, it doesn't seem to be working very well for you then, does it? If Jesus suffered and died in your place, but you still have to suffer and die, you just repeated your own argument. It's not working for you, okay? So you're going to have to come up with some other explanation that would explain suffering and death. And to me, the Catholic Church is the only church that can give an adequate explanation to suffering, the value of redemptive suffering. And then I went back, and when you read what the Bible actually says, it isn't what they say at all. It doesn't say that Jesus suffered so that I don't have to suffer. It doesn't say that Jesus died so that I don't have to die. What it says is that Jesus suffered so that my suffering has value. Jesus died so that my death has value. If my suffering and my death is united to his, otherwise, suffering in the world is just gratuitous.
Let me ask you something. Did Jesus say, hey, buddy, don't worry. Let me grab your cross for you? Did he say that? No. He told us to pick up our own, right?
Well, you try to reconcile okay, you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and that's it. That's not what I see in the martyrs. I mean,
No, right. That's a good example. Yeah.
I look at Ignatius. Well, Ignatius was fed to the lions. Lawrence was burned on a iron grate or whatever, a plate, whatever it was. Joan of Arc was burned alive. I mean, the apostles were shot with arrows, flayed alive, dragged behind horses. I mean, they went through horrible, unimaginable deaths. So this easy religion thing, that's the first thing. If I get a number two, since the answers that you gave, I think you cheated a little bit. If I get a number two, it's this whole notion that how can your faith be genuine if it doesn't change who you are? And if it doesn't change who you are, then there has to be a process by which it changes who you are. And this whole idea of synergy, that our works have, they claim our works have nothing to do with your salvation, or that it's all a matter of faith. And well,
they kind of linked the two together too, because if you say, well,
are equals then.
Yeah, well, I've heard arguments that, well, having works is okay, but that means you have faith. And I believe it's in James too, that he gives an analogy about the body and spirit being apart as two different entities of it. And so is faith and works. So what James is doing is acknowledging that faith and works are two separate things, because you don't have to be a believer to do good works, right? And in Matthew 25, the difference between the sheep and goats is what they did and did not do.
The interesting thing is, it almost sounds like, when you're reading the Bible, it almost sounds like Paul and James are having an argument.
It sounds like that way. Yes, it does.
Because Paul says that Abraham was justified by faith. All right. But then James turns around and says, well, Abraham was justified by works. So it sounds like, what are Paul and James having an argument? No, they're giving two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Two sides of the same coin. Where Paul is saying that you cannot be saved by works without faith. James is saying you cannot be saved by faith without works. That the two,
right.
The two are synergistic.
I think I think in every mention of the day of judgment, you're judged according to your deeds. And just to and here's something that I've started realizing, sort of recently asking when I had these discussions with, say, non-Catholics, is that they'll point out Romans. You were justified by faith. I said, but it doesn't say faith alone. Oh, okay. I said, what's the context of Romans? Who was Paul kind of referencing in the background? And you'll get silence. They won't know how to answer. Paul was referring to works of the old law based on circumcision. So if you go a couple verses later or earlier in the thing, he was speaking of those getting called back to the temple to be circumcised. Old works of the law. So when he was saying that you're saved by faith, not of works, you got to put it in the context that he was being that he wasn't referring to works not of the old law. And that's the context. A lot of the context.
The larger context, the larger context of what Paul was talking about is, okay, how were the people of the Old Testament saved? How are the people who existed before the incarnation, how are they saved? How are they grafted into the salvation of Jesus Christ? Well, very simple. Were they saved by rams and bulls, the slaughtering of rams and bulls and sheep and goats and burnt? No. This is the context that Paul was saying. No one was ever saved by the blood of a ram or a goat or a sheep. They were saved by faith because they followed the law, but they didn't follow the law for the sake of the law. They followed the law by faith. Rather than going through this mechanical action of, okay, I'm going to sin on Monday and then I'm going to sacrifice 2 goats on Tuesday and I'm good. And let's face it, Dave, we see people in our faith like that too. There are people in our faith like that too that think that they get salvation without repentance. So what Paul was saying is they're grafted into this one perfect sacrifice of Christ by anticipation, because they participated in the old law by faith, not by works. All right. So what happened was, because they had that faith, when the Messiah was revealed, they accepted it, whether it be in this world or when he visited them in prison. They accepted him as the Messiah because of the faith. Whereas the Pharisees, they rejected the Messiah when he was right in their face. So that's the context of what Paul was saying, is that those who were saved by the law were not saved by the works of the law. They were saved by following the law in faith. It was the faith that saved them. And so then the context of what James is saying is, okay, you say you have faith, and you say I have faith and you have works. Prove to me your faith by your works. So the faith is the completion and perfection. I mean, the works are the completion and perfection of the faith. So the faith must come first. Faith must come first, and the works are the great. So you go to the verse that the proof text they like to quote, which is Ephesians chapter 2, and I love how they always chop off verse 10.
Yes.
Always,
usually you can refute a non-Catholic just by going within 1 or 2 verses of what they say.
Yeah, let me.
That's one of them.
I'm going to try to bring this up real quick.
They were talking about works of I believe it was Gentiles in that set context.
Yeah.
And it says that Jesus Christ was created for you in good works, kind of deal, or something along that line. You'll pull it up.
It says, so by grace you're saved through faith. It is not of works, lest no one should boast. But the verse 10, let me see if I can find it real quick.
For once you were a Gentile church or something, or uncircumcised or something like that. There was something in wording in like that. I keep on wanting to say it's verse 11, but I could be wrong. It's been a little while.
Just give me a second.
I have to go bang my head in a debate board in a couple of days just to just to re-update myself.
All right, so I got Ephesians 2 here. All right. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not the result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So they try to chop off verse 10 and say, well, see, you're saved by faith. It's not of works. Well, it's not of works, but it's for works. This is what it's
Isn't
saying.
verse 11 speaking to that says mentions something? I don't know. It's verse 11 or verse 12 that says that you were once a Gentile church.
Therefore, remember that at one time you Gentiles in the flesh called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hands. Remember that you were at that time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you were once far off, have been brought near by the blood of Christ.
Yeah. So it was referring to their works, that were not Christian works. It was work that the old law. Now we're into the new law.
Right. But the issue is when I confronted people with this passage, it says, okay, all right. So if I were to, let's talk about basic sentence structure here. Okay, if I were to say, yesterday I was flying a kite and it got stuck in the tree, what does the it refer to?
The kite.
The kite. Okay.
Yep.
Doesn't refer to stuck. It refers to the kite.
Right.
Okay. So the pronoun just refers to the object, not the action. Okay. So it says, for by grace you have been saved. It is a free gift of God, not of good works. Well, then I asked them, well, what does the it refer to? Well, it refers to salvation. The saved is the action. It refers to the subject, grace. Grace is the free gift from God. It is the free gift from God. How is it received? By faith. We receive grace by faith, and it is why you're saved. For what purpose? For the good works that have been prepared for us to do. So if you follow the sentence, you follow basic sentence structure, you understand that grace is the free gift.
Speaking of action, there's that one book that's an obvious point that is the Acts of the Apostles. It's not the faith alone of the apostles, it's the Acts of the Apostles.
There you go.
I mean, that's
a checkmate argument. It's not
That's
called the faith alone of the apostles.
right. There's nothing in the creed about faith alone in the apostles. And I've been in some non-Catholic churches. Well, they'll recite the creed.
Yeah.
And then you get into the argument of, or not, I hate to call them arguments. I mean, it's the debate. They'll say, oh, well, it's Catholic, but it's little c Catholic. But the issue is how they're putting it is, in the early church, when they were forming these letters, there was no big and little c. It was all standard case. So there's the argument to that is mute.
The issue is, the
yes.
issue is they don't understand what grace is. They don't understand what grace is. Grace is it's a substance. It's a thing. It's something that exists. People say, well, grace, that's just God's unmerited favor. Okay. Well, that's interesting because Ephesians 3 says we receive grace according to God's goodness. So what are you saying? We receive grace according to God's goodness and favor, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. What you're saying is we receive God's favor according to his favor.
Mm-hmm.
No, grace is something that we receive according to his favor. And it is, they are correct when they say that our flesh is weak, and according to our own ability, we can't face the trials that we must face. Grace is the difference. grace.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, just getting back to, some of what me and you were going through, and having our faith bias. I mean, this becomes, a dominant factor, just helping us get through something. Because there was, especially like at the time of hearing my appellate opinion, like, I didn't like. There was nobody on earth that could have gave me an answer that, I mean, because I already knew, like, it was that deceptive, and I just had to see God. There's anything else other than people to have some sort of. I mean, the first time I believe I went there was, my local priest showed up. It was just all coincidence. I was like, I called him up because I consider him a friend as much as the priest of the church. I called him up and said, "Are you at the church?" So because I could speak to you right now. And I was in process of going there. Was nobody there, and I'm on the phone with him. He goes, actually, I was heading to the Padre Pio Shrine. I'm like, it's funny because I said, I'm just turning around from the church, because at the same time I said, I'm heading there too. So he went there, and I talked to him for a while. Been there, did some praying. There was multiple people there, and I believe it was on the National Prayer for Mary Day or something like that. That I was there, and I went there several other times just to get some strength reconstituted in me to give me a reboot. And I try and make it a habit just to always try and pit stop through there when I can.
It's the essence of what this is about. The
Yeah.
title of this blog, The Four Persons, that's the essence of what it's about. It's about, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. You don't tap into that spiritual element, you're not going to survive. Because at the end of the day, that's what all of this is about. It's an attack. It's attacked by us, by the devil. It's an attack on us by the devil, and he's going to try to break your spirit. He's going to try to break your will. And God bless you for keeping up the fight. My heart breaks for what you're going through, and
I've been dealing with this since 2018. Is when I filed, and it's still proceeding. It's at the I'm into the federal courts level. I got a little bit of hope in a courtroom that is most likely going to dismiss my case for some jurisdictional stuff, but I got to try. That's just
well,
what I got to do. But
look, you've been through stuff that would have buried a lot of people. So, my by the way, team, you use this. Want to advertise this, or you can't see it on
I can't see it.
It's showing up as invisible, and that's something.
I can't see it.
That's
I
wild.
got to roll to a baseball game.
It's hand lotion, but it's called Immaculate Waters.
Okay.
It's actually hand lotion that contains water from the spring at Lourdes. Now you see it? It just appeared.
Now I can. Yeah, the blue bottle, or it looks blue.
Yeah, it appeared.
When you were holding it by your head, it came up. Yep.
It's got actual water from the spring at Lourdes, so you can go online and order it. So it's just non-greasy. Your hands get chapped or whatever, but water from the spring at Lourdes, and so it's a pretty neat thing. So, all right. Well, until next time, enjoy your baseball, and
Sure.
God bless, and we'll catch you on the next one.
You have a good one, John. I'll catch you, buddy.